Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MetrObelisk Radio. Today we are going to be looking at Freejack. Now this is a movie that really doesn't get talked about often unless if a big movie podcaster or movie YouTuber just wants to crap all over it because it's the cool thing to do. So the only question that I'm going to leave on the table is this. Is this movie as bad as everyone makes it out to be? Now, before we get started, make sure to follow the blog, MetrObeliskRadio.blogspot.com, where you can stay up to date on all MetrObelisk Radio uploads, no matter if they're exclusive to YouTube, BitChute, Library, or whatever platform you're currently watching this on. Now, with that out of the way, let's get right into Freejack. As always with all these retrospectives, we always start off with the creative team. Now, this movie was directed by Jeff Murphy. Now, his directing credits include the movies The Quiet Earth, Never Say Die with Tamura Morrison, yes, Jango Fett himself, Under Siege 2 Dark Territory with Steven Seagal, and Young Guns 2 with Emilio Estevez and Lou Diamond Phillips. Now let's start with the writers, and the first writer I want to look at is Robert Sheckley. Now this movie is based on his novel Immortality Inc., and that's why I bring this up. Then we get to Steven Pressfield. Now he wrote the story and screenplay for this movie. His writing credits include Above the Law with Steven Seagal, Army of One with Dolph Lundgren, Separate Lives with Jim Belushi, and the novel that was later adapted into a movie, The Legend of Bagger Vance, and the movie would go on to star Matt Damon and Will Smith. Then we get to Ronald Shusett. Now his writing credits include Alien, Above the Law, King Kong Lives, and Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And finally we have Dan Gilroy, the brother of Tony Gilroy. Now this movie was his first writing credit, and his other writing credits include Chasers with Tom Berenger, Two for the Money with Al Pacino and Matthew McConaughey, Real Steel with Hugh Jackman, The Bourne Legacy with Jeremy Renner, and Kong Skull Island that had Samuel L. Jackson and Tom Hiddleston. Now let's get into the character analysis portion of our retrospective, and we're going to start off with Emilio Estevez as Alex Furlong. Now he's our main character of the movie, and he's a race car driver, a Formula One driver to be exact, who gets extracted before a deadly crash via time travel for someone in the future to save their mind, and we'll go more into that later. Then we get Mick Jagger as Vasendak. Now he's known as a bonejacker, and in this movie, a bonejacker is a mercenary who has the time travel technology to bring someone from the past back into the present. He has to chase Alex Furlong to bring him back to appease the client who wants Alex's body to preserve his mind. Then we have Renee Russo as Julie Redland, and she's the love interest for Alex Furlong. She moves on after his death and initially doesn't believe that Alex ran into her in the future. She only realizes that it isn't BS until the Bonejackers basically set up Alex to break into her apartment by bypassing her security. Then we get Anthony Hopkins as McCandless. Now, he's Julie's boss, and he ultimately turns out to be the guy who wants to preserve his brain in Alex's body so that he could continue on enjoying his fortune. He also wanted Alex specifically because Julie was in love with Alex, and McCandless fell in love with her in the future. McCandless wanted Alex's body more so to get together with Julie than anything. And then finally we have Jonathan Beggs as Michelet, and he plays McCandless's business partner. Now, he doesn't want Alex to carry out the mission to preserve McCandless's mind because he was wanting to take over the business. Most people might recognize the actor who played Michelet. If you've ever seen Breaking Bad, you know who Jonathan Beggs is. He played Mike, who was the former cop turned private investigator turned hitman. He started in season 3 and went until mid to late season 5 with this character's death. Now let's get into the narrative analysis portion of this retrospective. Now this movie starts out in 1991 and shows Alex Furlong in a race. He then crashes his car and presumably dies. But we see that he gets pulled before the crash and is taken to some point in the future. And what year is he in now? He was transported to the magical year of 2009. So apparently by 2009, the world has completely gone to shit. New York City is now divided into different zones. So you have your more impoverished areas, and then you get over the bridge and see more of Manhattan with Central Park, and it's all nice and colorful. The more impoverished areas look like a war zone. So basically it's a modern metropolitan city in a sense. Seriously, this movie could have been classified under the cyberpunk genre of science fiction because of what's shown, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. Alex escapes from these bonejackers and is now labeled what is known as a quote-unquote Freejack. And that's basically, you know, someone from the past escapes, and now they have to put out a bounty on his head to bring him back in because some wealthy guy paid to have Alex as a replacement body. Why not just use someone from the more impoverished areas as the replacement, you might ask? Well, in this world, people have gotten very sick from overpollution and heavy drug use. So using someone from the present time isn't really an option for a replacement body if you want to live for the next, 70, 80 years after your death. Yeah, because the wealthy would rather bring someone back from the past and use them rather than anyone else. Now, Alex runs into Julie, who was his love interest back in 1991, and she doesn't believe that he's the real Alex. She then helps him later on, escape after she learns that he's the real Alex Furlong. It later turns out that she's working for the guy who wants to use Alex's body as the replacement because he was dying, and then he later died in the movie. And this leads to a big chase between Alex and Vasendak that lasts for most of the movie. Now, they later go back to the big corporate office where Miss Gillette reveals that he doesn't want Alex to be the replacement body because Miss Gillette wants to assume control of the entire company. So Miss Gillette tries to have them killed, but Alex and Julie go to the very tippy top of the building to do the mind swap. Now, the mind swap doesn't work, but Alex pretends that he has become mechanless to have Miss Gillette killed. Alex and Julie live happily ever after, until Vasendak reminds Julie to train Alex better because the real mechanless couldn't drive. Now, Vasendak reveals that Alex didn't really get the identity number even close, but let him live on anyway because, in my opinion, he couldn't stand Miss Gillette, and Alex did save his life earlier in the movie. So you have not only a life debt, but also another person you just can't fucking stand, so you're just gonna go with it. Now, how was this movie received at the time? Well, this movie has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 18% based on 17 critic reviews, and an audience score of 25% based on 14,292 audience reviews. And this movie sits on IMDb at 5.4 out of 10 based on 14,600 reviews. And as of the recording of this episode, I personally can't find the listing for this movie on Metacritic. So if you find it, more power to you. Let me know in the comments what the Metacritic score and the user score is, because I am genuinely curious what the people on Metacritic thought. But to get back to the reception portion, this movie had a reported budget of $30 million, and it grossed $17,129,026. Now, I personally don't feel that I need to adjust these numbers for inflation to show that this movie was a bomb at the time and would still be considered a bomb to this day. Now, this movie definitely falls under the weirder side of science fiction. There's some great ideas in this movie with regards to time travel and mind swapping, but they just have a bad execution. Also, like I said, the idea of transcendence where one puts their mind into another body, cool idea to explore, but the movie barely touches on the actual transcendence idea for me to give an actual opinion on the idea. Because the idea of transcendence only comes about at the very end when Alex and Julie go to the very tippy top of the building and you're in like the last 10 minutes of the movie. And I'll end off this episode with this. Is this movie as bad as everyone makes it out to be? No, not even close. I've seen way, way worse movies than what this movie brings to the table. Now, this movie is definitely one of those cult classics like Blade Runner or 12 Monkeys. Now, this movie doesn't take itself as seriously as Blade Runner or 12 Monkeys. It's a fun movie to watch when you're just not in the mood to think about what you're watching. The description of this movie will tell you that it's a sci-fi thriller, but I would say that the best parts of the movie feel like an action movie more than anything. Now, is there any reason for me to personally go back and rewatch this movie? The answer to that is maybe. I know I said that this movie can be a fun action movie at its best moments, but there's other movies that I rank higher on my rewatch list over this, and if I want to watch a good cyberpunk movie and I don't want to put in Blade Runner or The Running Man, then I would definitely put this movie on.